Welcome, District 4. Today we have the candidate for District Director for 2025-2026, Nadine. Nadine is going to begin with an opening statement. Please welcome Nadine.
Thanks, Jennifer. I feel very honored and humbled to speak to you today as a candidate for District Director. And as I reflected on my vision for this upcoming term, it brought me back to the very early stages of my own Toastmasters career, when I attended these first meetings as a guest. And at some point, we would move from this speech topic area into the impromptu speech section. And at some point, someone would ask, Nadine, would you like to give it a try? And my heart would start racing and my hands would get sweaty. And then all of a sudden, a voice would say, yes, of course. And this would come out of my mouth. And don't ask me what the question was. And I don't remember the answer. And the answer probably wasn't really changing the world, but it changed my world, because it showed me that growth is happening in moments where we say yes, even when we are uncertain. I'd say especially when we are uncertain. And that's the spirit that I'd like to use as a district director in this upcoming term. Let's be bold. Let's embrace bold decisions, a moonshot in our own Toastmasters way. We should say yes to reimagining how we support our clubs, saying yes to developing leaders at all different levels, and say yes to a district where people don't just show up, they're proactively engaged. I've seen inside of Toastmasters and outside what is possible when you lead with a heart and you act with purpose. For this upcoming term, let's take it a little further. Let's build this kind of district that lights up people. And members say, this is the place I want to grow. That's our mission. That's our moonshot. And I would be so honored leading us there. And now I'm super eager to get some questions from you, Jennifer, and doing that. I'm a little nervous, but let's get to it.
Tell us what you believe the role of District Director is.
Thank you for this first question. The role of a district director, I'd say, is the chief executive officer, and you align the strategic direction of this whole district. And we have so many clubs in this district and so many leaders in our district. So alignment is one key element. We have on the very top of this leadership level, we have 3 people in charge, so to say, the district director, we have the growth director, and the program quality director. And I see it as my responsibility to support the program quality director and also the growth director. We shouldn't forget about the budget, because everything that we are doing is serving a certain purpose, right? And if we put events together, if we invite you meeting in person and doing fun stuff, there is a certain budget needed. And so I am in charge really creating this budget and making sure that we are staying in the budget. And last but not least, I think we need some great listening. And I'm there to approach our members, our clubs, and our leaders and be there to listen and to show up and to role model our values, the Toastmasters: integrity, respect, service, and excellence.
Tell us about your vision as District Director.
As I mentioned early on, it's about these moments that create a certain level of uncertainty, and we still commit to saying yes. That is needed in a volunteer-led organization. And that's especially needed nowadays with all these different changes going on outside in the world. Toastmasters can provide us with a space, with an environment where we can just be. We can grow, we can develop, we can come together, we can find a community. This is the vision that I have for our district.
Finding volunteers can be difficult. Tell us how you plan on motivating members to become more active in the district.
Everybody of us is driven by certain values and a purpose. And of course, we have on the one side, we have our Toastmasters values, and we should always embrace them. But then we should also, again, checking in with all these members and leaders. What is your vision? What is your plan for yourself? Where do you want to be in a couple of years from now? And it's super important to make sure that every member is able to connect with their own values. And that's something where volunteer work comes in. If you speak the language of values, if you lead with the heart and you proactively listening, you can find these volunteers, and these volunteers might also find you because they see that you are actually caring for them. It brings me back to this community element. I'd say a community is there to provide a safe space where you can just be, where you can celebrate your successes, but at the same time, when you have any lows in your life, you can find this community that is taking care of you. And that's something that we sometimes forget when we think about volunteers.
There are times as district director where you will need to make a final decision. Tell us about your decision-making process.
It's a very good point. Decision making versus decision sharing is something that I'd like to explore a little bit more when I answer this question. There's one element that decision can be made, but there's another element that decision need to be shared and lived up to. And in order to really come to a decision that is in alignment with a lot of us, we need to, again, listen deeply. So that's the first step. Let's collect input from various different influences and people that should have a say in this. As we are collecting input and deeply listening to their needs, to their expectations, we make sure that we align these elements, these input elements, among the key leaders in the space. And then, of course, it is important at some point to be decisive and move forward, right? But of course, as long as you listen and you embed these inputs into the alignment, it's way easier to come to a conclusion. And what shouldn't stand in the way, and I've seen that firsthand as well in my day job, is that we aim for perfectionism, because that would just postpone decisions and bring us in a circle where we can't really land on a final decision, final say. And that's something that I am committed to not letting kind of getting between us, right? I'd rather have a decision and learn fast and move on and get to the next point than really having conversations over and over and really aiming for this perfectionism, because that is not creating any progress. And progress is key. We want to stay in motion, right? We don't want to stagnate.
Sometimes there'll be a situation where the betterment of the group conflicts with your own personal goals. How will you handle that situation? And will you choose to do what's best for the group or yourself?
That's a deep question. And as I reflect on that, I think there are so many situations in my life where I've put my own needs aside and just focused on what is good for the group and for people around me. And maybe that's also part of my value system, just trying to help my community and seeing where help is needed the most. But it really brings back a nice little memory. And maybe from a first perspective, it is not so nice, but at the end, it turned out pretty nice. So I was 6 years old and I lived in eastern part of Germany. And back in the days, you needed to pass a health exam to enter the school system. And the doctors would evaluate your weight and a couple of other things. And a friend of mine, in fact, didn't pass that exam. She was underweight. We were 6 years old, lo and behold, and they would send her to a nutrition camp. And that nutrition camp would last 6 weeks. So we were 6 years old and the plan was to send my best friend away from her parents, from her environment for 6 weeks. And my friend, I still remember that she begged me, what if you could come with me, right? And I was scared, but I also saw the need of my friend. So eventually I went with her. We begged our moms, we begged the doctors, and it turned out that we were able to go together. We were on this journey in the bus, and the moment we arrived, we were actually separated. So we were never able to hang out over the course of the 6 weeks. And it was a really hurtful and a really shocking experience for me being 6 years old. We met again in the bus on our way back after the 6 weeks have passed. And what it told me and what it brought up to me is that sometimes help that is needed for a friend is bigger than your own needs, right? And I learned a lot out of the situation that my friend actually, even though we weren't in the same group, she always knew that I would go through the same experience and we were able to talk about that. And that really meant so much for her. And it really carried through my whole life that in some moments you have to make these trade-off decisions, and things that are not immediately being the best decisions for yourself might be at a later point in time. And as I reflect on the story, you might also realize now that is actually turning into a really nice result for Nadine now, because she was able to experience a situation and really empathize with her friend deeply. And we grew even stronger together as friends. And so this is also how brings let's bring it back to Toastmasters and to this role, right? There will be these moments where I will be challenged and I need to go deep inside, and really make the best decision for the team and for myself. But you can be sure that serving the community and this inner need to help others is really ingrained, deeply ingrained in me.
There are times when deck members do not fully understand the use of the budget. How do you plan on helping them learn?
It's a good question, and we can't assume that everybody is having the same knowledge and understanding of different subject areas, right? And so education is super critical for that piece. So making sure to listen, actively listening and understanding the signs that will tell you, wait a minute, you only have half of your team members understanding what you are actually saying, right? And then it's in these moments, it's important to pause and not to finger point and to call out people, but to take a pause and say, you know what? Let's just postpone the conversation to a later point in time. Let's make sure that we are on the same page and understanding the subject before we make an informed and aligned decision, right? And so in these moments, I'd say we would engage in educating our members. We might have mentors that are able to help these people to understand the structure of the budget and what will take us from here to there, and also how to manage the budget, right? So that's also an important element that we shouldn't forget. And once we have upskilled, so to say, the team, then we can move forward. We don't want to lose anyone along the way, right? And it's not about rushing through the budget is such an important point because we want to take care of the dues that our members pay, right? We want to honor that and we want to use it to the best in the best way that we can for the district to grow and to obviously execute on this amazing vision that I just described earlier in this call.
You have a deck member that isn't being responsive or engaged. How do you handle this situation?
So of course the easiest way is to just kind of check in the rule book and try to find a replacement, but that's not me. So I feel that we are part of a volunteer organization. So there is a reason why people show up in the first place. So this person showed up in this division director leadership kind of selection progress process in the first place. And so I would like to understand why this person all of a sudden is not as present anymore. And again, listening is so important. And in fact, Harvard Business School rated listening skills as 1 out of 3 major skills that we need to kind of further evolve in this year and the years to come. We haven't paid a lot of attention on what it means to listen deeply. And I feel if we just take a step back again and engage with this person that is not responsive and trying to find out what is behind um, their decisions not to show up, not to engage, then we might identify a good path forward. But again, the accountability doesn't start just because someone doesn't stop just because someone is not engaging anymore. So as I'm seeking out to listen, I also would like to give the accountability first in the hands of the person that is not responsive, to also give him or her or them the chance to change the situation or to elaborate with me together on a solution that is in the best interest of our members and our district. Again, brings us back to the values. What are the values that this person is motivated by, and how is it aligned with the Toastmasters values, right? So that is my approach for these situations.
What innovation will you bring to the role of district director?
Innovation is top of mind for a lot of us. I'm in biotech, and a lot of my peers at Toastmasters are as well in tech. And with Gen AI and all this fancy stuff, one could ask, okay, where will we be in a couple of years? Will Toastmasters even exist in this future world? And I'd say yes. And I'd say yes, and we should start today thinking how we can better leverage these new technologies for our own benefits, how we can get more acquainted and familiar with these new technologies. So that's one element that I would like to explore in the next year. But again, I also called out that I would like to see a district that brightens up, that lights up people, right, in a good way, in a motivating way, and that brings back the fun and kind of the being loose element among Toastmasters members. And so, how can we do that? There are certain ideas that we can come up with. One idea that just crossed my mind is, what about a Guinness World Record about the longest speech ever among team members? Something fun that motivates people and that brings back the purpose, the initial reason why we all signed up for Toastmasters, to find a place where we can grow. If we are only being too stressed out about numbers and how this district and our club is performing, we miss out on so many things. And I guess the innovative elements, it's not rocket science. We are not reinventing the wheel. We're just bringing back what we had at some point and trying to find ways how to revitalize that and reimagine that. I guess that is an area that I'm keen to understand, and I'm looking in the next upcoming leadership team to also engage with me in these brainstorming activities to find maybe 1 or 2 ideas that we'd like to further investigate and just try out. At the end of the day, innovation is not just trying one thing and then that's it. Innovation is also a try and error process. And as we just learned with the recent launch of the Stage Time, the Speaker Bureau, sometimes you don't have all the answers. You have a bold vision and you think this might be innovative, or maybe we had that already and we are just changing the context a little. And then you are just experimenting. You are testing your hypothesis. And it was a short period of time. And after this, you might learn either, you know what, it was a good idea, but maybe the timing is not right. Maybe we don't have the right people, or maybe it's just not feeling, that we are in the right space. So we stop it. But then there are other moments where we might learn, you know what, this was a successful pilot. This was a successful experiment. Let's continue. Let's move it into the next stage and see if we can now even reach broader audience groups, for example, right? And so that's this whole innovation piece, being open for new movements outside of Toastmasters, technology developments, but also honing into the elements that we already had, and maybe we stopped doing them, and we might want to bring them back, or maybe we give them a new color, or we put that wine into new bottles, right? And that might also serve us. Great question.
Have you ever created a strategic plan? And if so, how did it play out?
Many strategic plans. Strategy development is one of my key areas as well, my day job. And a plan is always good, but a plan is not a document that exists once and then you put it aside. A plan is a living document. So how are you creating the strategic plan? A strategic plan allows for alignment among key influencers and stakeholders as you kind of want to execute on your solution. Just recently, we learned at the company that I'm involved in that leaders need to change their ways of working because they are so siloed in their functions and they are not acting across functions and being function agnostic. So we brought a couple of leaders together and we came up with this great design of this new ways of working guideline. And instead of rolling it out to the broader organization, we handpicked our key priority area teams. And these three teams, they were guinea pigs. And so the strategic plan foresaw that we test out this new ways of working model with them, learn, incorporate the learnings, and then we move into scaling. So you see, as I elaborate on the strategic plan, you have an initiation, a design phase, where you put your solution together, your kind of starting point, and then you want to at some point you want to scale, you want to have the return on invest. And how do you get there? Either you have this kind of overarching rollout at once, or you go in small steps and small increments. And I'm more in favor of the latter one. So you go in small increments and then you kind of incorporate your learnings and then you adjust your plan. So as I said, it's a living document, and that makes it at the end of the day a successful experience. I guess at the end of the day, when we think about strategy development and implementation, it's all about the experience. You want the people that are involved or impacted by these changes to leave this whole process with a positive experience, so that people also get really fast from this productivity gap that they're going to face into this, I'm motivated, I want to use that new tool, I want to work in this new ways of working. That's the idea, and a positive experience accelerates this process. So again, strategic planning, a very great area of close to my heart, and an area where I could, I guess, spend a couple of more minutes and give you more insights and more stories. But maybe we move on to the next question.
Recently, the board of directors made some changes. How do you plan on sharing these changes so that clubs can be successful?
Change, some people would say change is tough and people don't like change, but I'm going to challenge that, because who doesn't like a new car? Come on. Right? And so this is something that I'd like to also challenge, that people don't necessarily like change. I think people like change, but you need to bring forward the positive side of the things, the the aspects that really will benefit the people, right? In order to understand that and to be able to communicate in that way, again, it brings me back to the listening skills. If you are listening closely to your members, you know what is needed for them as a benefit, what their value system is, what their needs are, and then you have to just speak their language, I feel, and really make it about them and not about the structural changes or politics or any kind of higher up decisions that have been made without hearing their kind of voices and considerations, right? Some changes are really just a change where you can't opt in or opt out. It's just a given. You just have to follow through. And this can be painful. But it can also be an opportunity for you to understand the needs of and the benefits for your members first, and then you start to draft your story on how you present the change to your members. And you might be really surprised how a different storyline can change the whole atmosphere when you present a change.
Share with us how you handle difficult situations or conversations.
Yeah, difficult situations and conversations is something that is the higher you get up, I feel the more important the skill becomes. You need to again understand the other side. You need to listen deeply. You need to, if it's too intense, just call out a pause, because what you don't want to have in these tensed conversations and in this high conflict moment, that emotions are kind of driving what you say, and emotions are driving what your decision making looks like. You want to make sure that you move forward in this discussion with a fact-based approach, right? And in order to do that, sometimes it's helpful to just call out a break, right? You sleep a night over it, or in my case, I prefer to do a little workout, to listen to some music, to get some fresh air into my brain, and then with a fresh mind, I gonna look into the situation again. I gonna start listening and understanding the situation, and then you can show up as someone who's not being too reactive, rather someone who is proactively kind of trying to find the best result out of this conflict. But it is clearly a journey for me, and I wouldn't say for myself that I'm a master in conflict resolution. I can only say this is with every conflict and situation that is highly intense, that I'm learning to get better at it.
What is one lesson you learned in your district leadership journey that you believe will help you succeed in this role?
A key lesson that I learned is people matter. No matter where you go, no matter what your role looks like, no matter at what leadership level you act, people matter. People matter because they build relationships, and relationships ultimately form a community. Brings me back to my value system around serving others, helping others, and really embracing the communities that helped me to be where I am, to be what I am, and to be what I aim to be in the future. Thank you. And I think we are almost at the end. We are at the yellow time signal.
You're ready to be done?
I think I'm ready to be done, just
Okay.
to have a proper closeout.
Thank you, Nadine, for your time this evening. Thank you, everyone, for watching.